In 1558, the Teutonic Order collapsed suddenly and left a power vacuum in the Baltic region that most of its neighbors sought to take advantage of. The resulting tumultuous century and a half first saw Sweden rise from humble beginnings to build an impressive empire encompassing most of the Baltic shore, followed by the decline of this same empire, along with those of Denmark and Poland-Lithuania, the humble origins of Prussia, and then finally, the emergence of Russia onto the world stage as a major power in 1721 at the end of the Great Northern War. The balance of power in northeastern Europe was forever changed. Baltic Empires is a historical strategy game for 2 to 5 players that explores these lesser-known conflicts in a fun and accessible format, while also capturing the fascinating history of the Baltic Sea region during this period. How often do you pay attention to the art in board games? Especially historical board games, where often we hear about how much research the game designers do to really capture the history in the game mechanisms. But the art can also really help elevate a gaming experience and make it feel even more immersive. Well, in this GMT Games art showcase video, we're taking a look at some of the component artwork for Baltic Empires, which was designed by Brian Asklev, featuring artwork from Nils Johansson, who was kind enough to share some insight on his process. Let's start with the centerpiece of Baltic Empires, the main game board, which is a map representing the Baltic Sea region, separated into land areas referred to as provinces and sea areas. The art featured in Baltic Empires was heavily inspired by woodcut, which was a popular map-making technique used in the 16th and 17th centuries. The woodcut process is a relief printmaking technique that involves printing an image from a carved plank of wood. The image is cut into the wood using tools such as chisels, gouges, and knives, and then raised areas of the image are inked and printed, while cutaway or recessed areas do not receive ink and appear blank on printed paper. Colored parts would be inked in a first round. Then the black areas and black strokes would only be inked later on, and the same paper with the colored areas would then be applied again onto the wooden block. The difficulty of placing the paper in the exact same way onto the blocks would translate as color bleeds, meaning that the black outlines and black inks would look slightly off and sometimes miss the colored areas, as you can see in the imagery on the Baltic Empires map. The brownish beige areas for the sea monster, churches, and the coat of arms nearby are slightly off. The colored areas and black outlines don't align, translating that iconic imperfection that you frequently see in woodcuts. All strokes and black outlines are hand-drawn to render the specific aspects of the gouge or knife used to carve those wood blocks, which varied in width and shape. Another interesting part of these old maps is the intent and purpose of the map maker. Maps were expected to explain the world, not just measure it. Geography at the time was not a scientific discipline. Knowledge of the world was a combination of direct observation, classical authorities, oral reports from sailors, merchants, and the clergy, as well as moral, political, and religious meanings. The emblematic imagery you see everywhere on the map serves a specific purpose. The Monsters and Wonders signals reliance on ancient and medieval authority. The scenes of rulers, the coat of arms, and the churches assert political and ecclesiastical order. Depictions of resources such as fish, flax, forests, and animals advertises the North's wealth. There are a lot of Easter eggs spread throughout the map that play with the imagery of the period to represent specific events or persons that were involved in the development of the Baltic Empires. In the game, each player controls one of 5 asymmetric powers with different strengths, forces, and historical objectives. Each power has their own player mat that shows a summary of the round phases, special rules affecting the power, a summary of victory conditions and national ambitions, and spaces along both sides for unit counters to be placed with their corresponding upkeep costs. Nils felt it was important to place a double hemispheric view of the playing area at the center of the player mats. It's iconic for the period and helps with the player immersion into the time frame. Another specific choice was for each power to represent in the lower half of the playmats a stylized facade or architectural detail emblematic of that power's capital at the time. During the game, you'll be collecting resources, goods, and thalers, building new infrastructure and different types of units such as infantry, cavalry, ships, and fortresses, and recruiting historical figures to your court with the Dramatis Personae cards, all to prep your power for going to war to expand your empire and fulfill your national ambition. In addition to the woodcut techniques, the idea was to make the characters more relatable, almost our contemporaries. The goal was to make them look alive, close to what they would have looked like in person at the time. During the game, players track their power's hegemony levels in 3 different areas: mercantile, production, and military. The hegemony tracks mat features 2 different versions, one more decorative spiraling track and one simpler vertical track, and you can use whichever side you prefer. In parallel to showcasing the woodcut technique, the spiral track is iconic of the first records of printed tabletop games. This is a reference to the game of Goose that would have players advance along a spiral path until they reach the last space in the middle of the page. The game of Goose format was relatable to contemporaries as this would reference the ups and downs, chaotic and unpredictable journeys of pilgrims. If you look here, Nils was adamant to include a reference to the dance macabre, or death represented as musicians, since maps at the time often include a warning and moralistic message to the audience. And then we have the box cover image, which is presented as one of those old book frontispieces or composite illustration that would serve as a title page. It also references the intricate ornamentation of that period. And then the Ouroboros, or the snake or dragon eating its tail, that pattern appears at various spots on the cover as a reference to the repeated cycle of life. Thanks for taking a moment to learn more about the beautiful artwork featured in Baltic Empires. And now, hopefully when you play the game, you'll be fully immersed in the historical setting, not only through the game mechanisms, but also through the art.